악은 악으로 처단한다.
Not the biggest fan of K-drama myself, but for 2 months straight, my friend wouldn't stop pestering me into watching Vincenzo, so I finally watched it. And for the most part, I have to say I was quite entertained. I found myself finishing this 20-episode series within 2 weeks, which consists of an hour and 20 minutes each. That's almost a feature-length film for each episode. However, although the show had some enjoyable moments, I did find the show to be slightly overlong and repetitive at times. Let's restart the plot. Well, the main plot first, because there are many. An Italian whatever, I still can't probably say that word. You know what, I'll just call him the Italian Mafia advisor. An Italian Mafia advisor returns to Korea after his boss dies, hoping to acquire hidden gold that only his partner and he supposedly know, only to find himself caught in a court case with an evil corrupt company, Babel. Then we have the side plots with the villagers cast, that's what my friends call them, so that's what I'm calling them too, which adds goofiness to the show. You either like them or hate them. We also get this romance plot, which I honestly didn't care much about at first, but as the show progressed, it really began to grow on me. A lot happens in this show, and for the most part, it balances the multiple storylines and side characters fairly well. I'll be honest, it took me half the show for me to really warm up to the characters, but by the end of the show, I really rooted and cared for them. My favorite storyline is the back and forth cat and mouse game as Vincenzo and Babel both try to get the upper hand, but only for the villains to realize that Vincenzo is always one step ahead when it comes to playing dirty, giving them a taste of their own medicine. I also enjoy the villagers cast. At first, I really didn't like them, but as the show progressed, I started to get to know the characters more, and I started to appreciate the comedy aspect of the show. Although yes, the comedy at times feels over the top and forced, it really does grow on you. The overall plot of the show is entertaining. However, I can't help but feel the plot was slightly overlong. It did not need an hour and 20-minute episode. I feel like the show could have been condensed into half its runtime and still be able to convey most of its storyline. Some scenes do feel repetitive, especially the scenes where Vincenzo and Babel go back and forth. There are too many scenes of bribery, forgery, false allegations. I kinda wish the show would progress forward instead of just watching them go back and forth at each other. It was entertaining at first, but it got a little tiring as we reached the halfway mark of the show. Each episode also always ends on a very anticlimactic note. It always ends with something very dramatic, yet you always know how it's going to end, which is a disappointment. In my mind, I constantly hear myself saying, it's not going to play out that way. It's not going to play out the way you think. Yet it always does. It is a little upsetting, but I guess it is K-drama. You have to follow a certain structure for it to work. Now let's talk about the main character, Vincenzo, or corn salad.
God, please, no! No!
Played by Son Joong-ki, the amount of names he is given in this show is hilarious. No one in the show seems to be able to pronounce his name correctly, and it just adds a layer of comedy to it. From the very first frame, his charisma is over the roof. There's no way you're not liking this guy, even though he has a very baby face. He's badass in every scene that he's in. In fact, he's so badass even pulling out a lighter, a dramatic score is needed. Why? Because he's Vincenzo. I also love the fact that upon moving to Korea, nothing seems to go his way, and whenever he gets pissed off, he starts cursing in Italian. Vincenzo alone makes this show worth watching. The villain of this show, there are a few, are also terrific. Also slight spoiler here, you've been warned, but the real star goes to Taehyung, the older brother of the evil company Babel. When the show began, he portrayed himself as this innocent, happy-go-lucky, quirky guy, when he was actually this maniacal psycho. The most amazing part is how he's able to switch between roles with the snap of a finger, and in a very convincing way. It feels like two completely different actors. He's terrifying, unhinged, and unpredictable, making him a great match for Vincenzo himself. You never know where he's heading next or his thoughts, as he never announces them to anyone. Whenever he's on screen, he steals the show. I also gotta take the time to mention the farmers cast. No, I did not like them at first. Imagine there's a spectrum for realism. It goes from here down to here whenever they show up. And at first, they really drag me out of the show, as it feels like two completely different stories. But the more I watch, the more I enjoy their presence. In fact, I long for them, as I allow myself to let go and really absorb the comedic aspect. They really added a comedic touch, and I, at times, found myself laughing out loud. Not everyone's gonna like them, as the comedy does feel forced. But if you're able to accept that Vincenzo and Farmer cast as two completely different stories, you may actually start to enjoy them. I also want to briefly talk about the CEO's younger brother. I didn't like him at first, but as we came close to the end of the series, his character arc made him one of my favorite characters in the show. When you truly understand him and get to know his backstory, it makes his character that much more fleshed out and likable. The tone of the series is one aspect that bothered me a bit. The tone is all over the place. One second you get this over-the-top comedy, the next you get this action extravaganza, and then you get this romantic storyline, which honestly I kinda expected that, as isn't that all K-dramas? That's one of the reasons why K-drama ain't always for me. But even with the forced comedy, sudden shift in tone, and predictable romance, I have to say, I still had tons of fun watching this series at times. The romance aspect was fine. The first half of the season, I didn't care much about Vincenzo's romance whatsoever. In fact, I found it overdone, and at times I wanted to skip forward as they were all the same to me. But halfway through the season, you kinda see their chemistry spark, just like the Farmers cast and the rest of the show. The romantic aspect really began to flourish. I also want to talk about the score choice. It is not good. All the scores from this show feel like they're royalty free. The score's so over the top and dramatic. Whenever there's an intense scene, the score just goes. And of course, we get this usual score from all the romantic scenes when we see K-dramas. Overall, Vincenzo was a decent watch, with likable characters and side characters that made the show enjoyable. What I really liked most was the concept of justice and evil getting what they deserve. And when the ending finally came, it wrapped that aspect up nicely, giving the villains the ending they earned. However, I wish the show had focused slightly more on the court case drama, as the ending shifted more towards revenge themed. I wanted to see both the villain and the company go down through Vincenzo and the justice system. But in the end, I ain't complaining too much. So yeah, Vincenzo's a fun little ride that at times had trouble balancing its tone and felt slightly overlong. But if you like K-drama, you're probably gonna enjoy this one. If you're not a big fan of K-drama like me, I still think you'll find something to enjoy out of this. Have you seen Vincenzo? Do you plan to see it? If you did, what did you think of it? Comment below and let me know. And as always, subscribe for your next travel ticket.